Okay, thank you everybody for joining us today and welcome to the January Member Luncheon of the Lake Stevens Chamber of Commerce, January 13th, 2021 via Zoom. Got excited about today's program. We have Ray Wilburn, CPA and MBA. He'll be with us here in just a moment. A couple of things to share with you first. First of all, I want to say I hope you all are safe and warm and made it through the storm last night. And hopefully if you don't have power, you have power back soon. If you need a cup of coffee, let me know. I'll bring it to you. First of all, we want to go over real quick. Like recently, the board of directors got together and we renewed and revised our mission for 2021. Our new mission is to build a vibrant business community here in Lake Stevens, the greater Lake Stevens area. And what do we mean by greater Lake Stevens area? We feel that businesses within Lake Stevens are obviously a vital part of our chamber existence, but we want to extend that. We feel that there's businesses just outside of Lake Stevens, Marysville, Everett, etc., Snohomish especially, those areas that are also participate in the commerce of Lake Stevens, and the community of Lake Stevens takes advantage of those businesses, and we want to engage those businesses as well to help build a better, vibrant business community. Those businesses can also, support the community as well as our local ones here. So we're excited to include those businesses in our vibrant business community going forward. We want to say thank you real quick, to our 2021 gold investors. First off, Ace Hardware of Lake Stevens, thank you for being a gold investor, as well as Community Transit. They are also a gold investor for 2021. We do also have silver investors, a couple of silver investors here, Waste Management, Heritage Bank, Wells Fargo, and Republic Services. A couple of things coming up for you. First, I want to remind you about networking events coming up over the next couple of weeks. Our virtual networking after hours next week on the Blitzer platform. I'm going to work up a tutorial video for Blitzer. Just keep an eye out for that later this week. Kind of give you an idea about how to register, how to look for events, look at the people who are there. It's got a unique system that allows you to set priorities for people that you want to have face-to-face, one-to-one contact with on the Blitzer network. It's really kind of tries to reach back and bring back a little bit of that contact that we lost from not being able to meet in person in our networking events. The Blitzer network does that, and I'll try to do a tutorial. Bring that to you guys later this week, so keep an eye out for the newsletter on Thursday afternoon. That will have, at very least, a link in it there. But again, networking after hours, 1 week from today, 5 o'clock on the Blitzer network. The following Tuesday after that, on January 26th, we have our morning mingle. This is our morning networking hour, and it is from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. and it will be via Zoom, so that's a little more familiar to you, I realize. It's a great place to kind of connect with local business leaders and prominent folks from the Lake Stevens area. We want to invite you to join us. Both of those you can find links for to register on our website at LakeStevensChamber.com. All righty. Quick introduction here. This is Ray Wilburn, CPA and MBA. With over 16 years of experience in audit, accounting, and organizational strategy, Ray Wilburn, CPA MBA, has held diverse positions in a wide variety of industries, beginning with a distinguished career in both the U.S. Army National Guard and the U.S. Navy. Ray has stayed true to his calling, seeing to it that organizations have a most efficient, compliant, sustainable, and scalable structure. Ray has worked for notable entities such as Washington State's Auditor's Office, the PwC, Getty Images, and the Kellogg Foundation, in addition to owning several small businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ray Wilburn. Welcome, sir. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you being here.
Great to be here. Thank you guys so much. Let me share my screen. Okay. So thank you, Matt, for such a great introduction. And it allows me to skip one of my slides, so that's awesome. So today we're going to be
before you get started, real quick, if you all are who are on here have questions for Ray, we've got the chat box open, so if you want to just type those in the chat box, throw them over there, and I'll interject them as I can with Ray, so that way Ray can keep his flow going there. And I will interject those questions as they come up. So use that chat box, feel free, and we'll get to them as soon as we can.
All right, so today we're going to be discussing navigating the PPP, PPP2, the EIDL, and grant funding. If we have time, we'll get to a really quick slide about economic impact payments. And all of these acronyms will make sense if they don't already as we go through the slideshow. So I'm going to skip, you know, a little bit about me. I'll just add, if you wanted to trust but verify, my license number in Washington State is 27273. I'm originally from the Bronx in New York City, and it was the US Navy that actually helped me to get to Everett, get to Washington State. So it was one of the greater times in my life, and I am a Pacific Northwesterner in my head as well as a Midwesterner now. So I'm very happy about that. So I was a licensed realtor in Everett, Washington for some time, and I worked at Keller Williams. So Gary Keller has this thing he would have realtors do, which is a POCA, a preview of coming attractions. So let's do that. What we're going to cover today are going to be the first and second rounds of the Paycheck Protection Program, that's PPP. We're going to talk about the Economic Injury Disaster Relief Loan that's specifically for COVID-19. We're going to talk about grants, but not really grants, but the documentation, how to kind of bulletproof your support for your expenditures if you've received a grant. And finally, just a quick blurb about economic impact payments if we have time, and then we'll do Q&A. Or I can answer questions while we go and see where we get. Either way, I am nothing if not flexible. So let's get right into the first round of Paycheck Protection Program forgiveness. So if we go back a little bit, the Paycheck Protection Program was enacted back in the second quarter of 2020. And the spirit of it was to help small businesses retain employees. Now, as you all know, there were some issues because Congress built the bike as they were riding it. It was a very quick thing that we were all responding to the pandemic, and it was new, and we didn't have really a contingency plan. So there were some bugs. Basically, Congress wrote the law and said, okay, Small Business Administration, handle it. So there were some rocky issues. If you were a recipient of the Paycheck Protection Program round one, there were some tax consequences prior to December 27th. So on December 27th is when we had the CAA 2021, which is the Congressional Appropriations Act. Sorry, I had to think about what CAA stood for. When that happened, Congress corrected a lot of the errors that were in that bill initially. So let's go back. If you had Paycheck Protection Program, it closed, round one, closed in August of 2020. So at that point, although the loan proceeds weren't taxable, there was a negative effect to your taxable income, meaning it increased your taxable income. I'll go over a quick example now. So if your business had gross receipts, gross revenue, you got paid for the thing that you do of $10,000, and you received the Paycheck Protection Program, and you had expenses of $5,000. Typically, you can say, I have $10,000 in gross receipts, I have $5,000 in expenses, I have $5,000 in taxable income. The IRS issued a ruling last year, and it basically said, okay, you can do that, but you can't deduct any expenses for your business that are paid by Paycheck Protection Program, which is completely opposite to what Congress wanted to do. The IRS Revenue Ruling 2021-12 corrects that. So now your loan proceeds, not only are they not taxable from a Paycheck Protection Program or EIDL, you still have the reasonable option to deduct allowable business expenses from your income, lowering your taxable income. So that was crucial because it was pretty dumb to give you loan funds, and then penalize you by increasing your taxable income. So I'm very happy about that. Now, if you were a recipient of the Paycheck Protection Program, the first round, and you're looking for forgiveness, there's a couple of things here. One, there are 3 different forms presently. You have Form 3508, that's for everybody. Everybody that has a loan above $50,000. There's also Form 3508S. 3508S is the simplified form for anyone that received under $50,000. All you have to do in that form, it's a very simple form. All you have to do in that form is assert a few things. I didn't use this for illegal stuff. I didn't use this in a way that was opposite of how I said I was going to use it, that kind of thing. It's a 1-page certification, and then you have to give your demographic information. Am I a male, female, African American, that kind of thing, veteran, not veteran, and then you hand it in. You have to have your documentation, but you don't have to submit anything. And then finally, there currently is a 3508 EZ. Now you have to be, that's for our self-employed brothers and sisters, and you have to have not reduced your employees' pay more than 25% and not reduce the number of hours for those same employees. Then you can use the 3508 EZ. Now, the thing to remember here, because what I mentioned before, Congress building the bike as we ride it, it's a confusing time. They're going to come out with a new form because the new CAA 2021, that Appropriations Act, 5,000-page act, which I'll just add anecdotally. I read A Song of Ice and Fire, that's Game of Thrones, right? It was on HBO show. I read that thing and it took me maybe 6 weeks if I count all the books, but I enjoyed that. This 5,000-page thing, I didn't enjoy that, it was terrible. But according to that, we're gonna have another simplified form. So basically, if you had Paycheck Protection Program in the first round and you're seeking forgiveness, you use this new form that's everything less than 150,000. So it's expanded and simplified things for a lot more small businesses. So that's all I have about the first round. The first round closed, the funding closed in August, and it doesn't really make sense to go over that too much. Just because it's closed now, you can't get it. But let's talk about the second draw. It's coming back and it was funded on December 27th. So let's talk about that for a little bit. And Matt, if there's any questions, you'll let me know, right? Okay. So this is new. This is awesome. So right now, like as of Monday, they've opened, they being the Small Business Administration, have opened the Paycheck Protection Program back up. Now, this is only open right now for first-time Paycheck Protection Program applicants. So if you missed the last round, for example, or you were denied or you withdrew your application, now's the time that you can reapply because you didn't actually get those funds. So Paycheck Protection basically is a 60-40 loan, meaning you have to use 60% of it on payroll costs. What are payroll costs? Payroll processing, benefits, dental, vision, that sort of thing. Everything that you're going to pay your employees count as payroll costs, right? Not federal withholding, right? Because you're not paying that for your employees, you just have to withhold for your employees. But the basic calculation for the Paycheck Protection Program is 2.5 times your average monthly payroll costs up to $2 million. For restaurants, it's 3.5 times your average monthly payroll costs. Now, what that means is if you, for example, have an employee that has a salary of $100,000, you would divide that $100,000 by 12, that's $8,333. a month, that's your average monthly, then you multiply that by 2.5. That's $20,833. That's what you're authorized to recoup from this loan to help you stretch through the pandemic if your revenues are down. Who's eligible? Small businesses. So 500 or fewer employees per location. That's important. That's how Ruth's Chris got into trouble. They weren't technically wrong for taking that money, but it was public opinion that kind of led them to giving it back because they're such a big organization. So 500 or fewer employees. Nonprofits are eligible, veterans organizations, tribal concerns, self-employed, sole proprietors, independent contractors. And now, Matt, you should be excited about this. 501c6s, provided you are not over your lobbying thresholds. And you don't, and for, I almost forgot, for 501c6s, you can't have more than 300 employees. So there's that. Now, I just want to stress this. Let me take a quick drink. I usually don't talk this long. Let me stress this. Why, hey Ray, why are you telling us about Paycheck Protection Program? The reason that the Paycheck Protection Program is so important to small businesses is this capital is nearly free. It's a 1% loan. So let's say that you qualify, you apply for the Paycheck Protection Program. You've got 10 months from when you receive the disbursement to have to start paying it back. Then you have 5 years to pay it back at 1% interest. Unless you have a wealthy relative, you are not going to get capital this cheap. Not now, not in this climate, not from any lender that I know. And frankly, my family isn't that nice to me, so I couldn't get it this cheap anyway, if even if they had it. So it's important for your business, if you have a plan and you need the capital, this is a way to go. I'm not an advocate for just taking loans or leveraging your business if you don't have a plan. Like a lot of my would-be clients and some of my clients are like, yeah, let's just get the money. Well, if you don't have a plan, you're in for a jackpot, right? You're going to get yourself in trouble. You won't be able to pay this loan back if you don't have some sort of plan. But if you have a plan, this is a bridge to this thing, or if something's going to change down the line that'll enable me to take this, or you know what, I can just afford the 1% interest. Think about it in those terms. But again, that's why I bring this to your attention is capital is important for a business and you're not going to really find it this cheap. Let's see. So what can I spend this Paycheck Protection Program on? This is exciting to me. I don't know if it's exciting to you guys, but it's exciting to me because they've expanded what you can use this loan for. So yeah, it's payroll costs. It's also, though, 40% of it can be used for utilities, for mortgage interest, for rent. Now, here's where it gets really exciting to me. If you have uninsured property damage, if you have damage related to protest or vandalism, that's on it. PP&E for your employees or for yourself, if you are, because of COVID, we have to do things a little bit differently, you can charge that. If you have cloud computing costs for having people work remote, you can use this loan for that. So I find that it's wonderful because we've incurred all these costs in this brave new world that I know I didn't anticipate. I didn't anticipate necessarily having to invest in Zoom Plus or, all these other things that COVID has brought to us. So now that I've got you all excited, let me tell you who doesn't qualify for this. Sorry about that. I should have maybe started with who doesn't qualify, but now we're all in a tizzy. I'll go over who doesn't qualify. So you are ineligible for PPP if your business officially closed. So if during the pandemic you couldn't survive it, you officially shuttered your doors, you are not qualified. Now, in the 5,000 page, I do this because this is how thick 5,000 pages is in my head. It's silent to how do you prove that you closed. So I'll leave that on you all to, how you prove that. But if your business has ended, you're no longer eligible. If you're permanently closed. If you are not in operation, if you were not in operation by February 15th of 2020, for PPP, and EIDL has its own, But for PPP, it's February 15, 2020. So if you started your business, you woke up, it was a good day, you started your business February 16th, you are ineligible for this thing. I would imagine you might be able to argue, but probably not. If you are a theater venue, or like you host weddings or parties or proms or things like that, there's something called a shuttered venue operators grant. I'm not going to talk about that today because it's so niche, right? I don't have any current theater clients and I haven't met that many theater operators. I'm happy to talk about it at another time, after this, outside of this. But if you're receiving that grant, you can't double dip. You can't have PPP and that grant. If you're a hedge fund, you're out of there. If you are a lobbying organization or publicly traded, you are ineligible for this grant. Here's an interesting one, and I don't know why they have this, but basically, I think they have this because they want American-owned small businesses. If you're affiliated with the People's Republic of China, or if you are registered under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, you are not eligible. If you are in Congress or a president, vice president, head of an executive department, you are not eligible. If you own more than 20% of any class entities listed under 13 CFR 12110, which doesn't apply to anybody here, I would imagine, you are ineligible. If you're a household employer, or if you are in bankruptcy, you can't do this. Which bankruptcy, I don't understand because you're technically still in business, but you're not. And then they have written in a clause where there are other. They don't list what other is, but there are other reasons you could be ineligible. So when in doubt, this is just general advice, when in doubt, apply. The only thing they can do is say no. There's no obligation to apply unless you're obviously not eligible. Okay, let's see. This is now open, and it's open. The first draw was open on Monday, and it is open through March 31st of this year. So you don't want to dally too much. You want to start to either start an application or get an agent to help you with the application and then start to apply. One thing I want to say about the PPP and EIDL differ in that the Paycheck Protection Program, although it's kind of sponsored and driven by the Small Business Administration, lenders, SBA approved lenders are the ones that give it to you. Now, if you have a relationship with a local bank, get in there, they have the skin. If you don't have a relationship with a local bank, I recommend financial technology organizations like a PayPal, Intuit, Lendio. These organizations online service this loan, and they're usually pretty quick, and you usually hear back relatively quickly. They also fund pretty quickly, so it's something to think about. If you're going into a credit union or a bank and it's just a blind situation, it's harder. If you have a relationship with somebody down there, perfect. Go with the person that you trust and that you have a relationship with, is my advice to you on that. All right. If you were excited about PPP round 2, first draw, let's talk about second draw. I got very excited there, so I hope you're excited too. So the second draw, okay, this is for folks that had the Paycheck Protection Program the first time around, the one that was funded in the second quarter of 2020 and that ended in August. So those folks can now have a second bite at the apple, but the requirements have changed slightly. So it's a new SBA Small Business Administration form, the SD 2483. If you want to take a second bite at the apple, you have to be a smaller business. You can't have 500 employees. You have to have 300 or fewer employees. And the reason I think that they did that was public sentiment was that big businesses took small businesses' money. Now, technically, I think to be fair, we probably should redefine what the Small Business Administration calls a small business. Technically, a small business, depending on the industry, it changes. But a small business is a business with 500 or fewer employees and 7.5 million in revenue, or up to 7.5 million in revenue. That's a pretty big business, but that's what this was written for. So they lowered that for the second round, second draw. So You have to have 300, in order to qualify for this, you have to have 300 or fewer employees. You have to have a 25% gross receipt decline in any calendar quarter 2020 compared to 2019. Let's go through a quick example. If I choose to compare Q2 of 2019, that's April through June, because it has to be a calendar quarter. You can't choose any 3 months you want, which, it is what it is. So if I choose Q2 of April 2019 through June 2019, and I want to compare it to my gross receipts, that's money I receive for the thing that I do. So if I happen to sell a tractor that I use in my business, that's not really what I do, right? But I'm using gross receipts, gross revenue. If I want to compare those two quarters, let's say that I made $100,000 in 2019 Q2. My benchmark now, based on a 25% gross receipt decline in any calendar quarter, my benchmark is going to be 75,000, right? I take away my 25%, I've got my 75,000. If I made more than $74,999 in Q2 of 2020, I am not eligible for the Paycheck Protection Program second draw. Many businesses, so let's just be honest with each other, because we're fast friends now. Many businesses don't keep quarterly financials. They should, or most should. It depends, right? Everything depends on your business. But if you don't have that, that's okay. We can just squish our monthly accounting. Some businesses don't have monthly accounting. That's a shame, but things happen. We can get you up to par. You do your financials for months, and then you squish them together. You have your calendar quarters. So, but you should be keeping your accounting records. If you're not, I'm not going to say I'm angry at you, but you should be keeping them. Now, if you don't have to include EIDL or PPP funds that you've already received, which is good. So again, in December 27th of 2020, the CAA 2021 changed that. The rules were pretty counterintuitive before, where you had to have either or. Now you can have both, and it doesn't count against you. So that's a big thing. Here's something. If you already had the PPP and you're on the second draw, you have to have had used the first round of funding, or you have to promise that or certify that you're going to use it. It's inevitable that you're going to use it. So that's something to be aware of too. Now, if you weren't in operation the entire year in 2019, you compare what you can compare. If you were in business all of 2019 and all of 2020, then you can just compare the years. That I have a 25% decline in my gross revenue year over year, and that's an easier alternate calculation. And of course, you are ineligible if you are permanently closed. And again, when you apply for forgiveness, it's $150,000 will be the simplified form. But again, I want to stress this. This is a 1% over 5-year loan. If you don't get forgiveness, it's still a good loan. But the thing that should have you super duper excited is, at the end of the day, you have a very good chance of having all of it forgiven. And forgiveness of debt is usually income. The IRS considers that income, not here. So that should be percolating in your mind that this capital, not only is it good for your business, but it's free-ish, right? It'll take time, and you'll have to either prepare your form carefully or pay somebody to do that for you, but it's darn close to free. All right, let's do some EIDL. Some people say idle, but idle means lazy to me, so I don't want to do that. I'm going to call it EIDL. So EIDL, so the Economic Injury Disaster Relief Loan, that's what EIDL stands for. So EIDL has been a staple at the SBA for years and years and years. I think that it came around the time of Hurricane Katrina, but it's been there. And when you go to the SBA website and look at it, it actually has an EIDL for COVID-19 specifically, and then regular EIDL. So if you had, perhaps if this windstorm just completely decimated your business, you could do EIDL non-COVID-19. But the rule, we're going to speak specifically about COVID-19 second round of EIDL. There was a first round for the EIDL for COVID-19 that started back in March. Now, you may recall when we're speaking about EIDL, a lot of people were excited about this grant because it included an advance and a loan portion. So people were like, EIDL is free money, it's great. So the advance, let's talk about that. It's set up so that if you apply for the EIDL, there's a checkbox on the form that if you knew about the checkbox, you check the checkbox. That would provide you an advance on the loan that you were being considered for, but the advance didn't have to be paid back. And it was $1,000 per employee. So if you had one employee, you would get $1,000, and that's free $1,000. If you had 10 employees, you get the full 10 grand, up to 10 grand. Like it would be ideal if it went up to, forever, but it went up to 10 grand, 10 employees. That was independent. The advance was independent from the loan and essentially was an automatic grant because you never had to pay this back. So basically you would apply, they'd send you the advance, and then they'd come and talk to you. The underwriters would come and talk to you about the loan. And then nobody would ever talk to you about this. And you were just happy with your 10 grand or whatever. In this round, they have changed the $10,000 grant. The $10,000 grant is not contingent this time around on the number of employees that you have. This time around, you just get it if you qualify. So they've changed the qualification. So I always get you excited, and then I got excited about that too. So January 17th, this Sunday, is when this is supposed to open. Now, the purpose of the EIDL is different from PPP, meaning you can use this thing on any business operational thing. You don't want to apply to this and then buy non-business essential things, right? You don't want to be silly with this. You want to use it for the purpose, but the purpose is for your business's operations. To be eligible, you have to have 300 employees or less. So this is for small businesses, cooperatives, faith-based churches, nonprofits, sole proprietors, and independent contractors are all eligible for this. Now, here's the rub this time around. So again, the SBA, what they're trying to do is make sure that underserviced communities and the smaller of the small businesses are being serviced. So you have to have 300 employees or less. You have to be in a basically a low impact community, and have to, hold on one second, I can't see my notes. Okay, you have to be in a low income community, and you have to have lost 30% of the revenue for your business in any 8-week period. So most of us who have had a revenue loss in our business under this environment, we have an 8-week period where we had a decline of 30%. I know for myself, one of the businesses I own is a tanning salon. Now, I'll give you a minute to appreciate the irony of me owning a tanning salon. But so I own a tanning salon, enjoy. And we actually were mandated to close. We lost all of our revenue during our tanning season, right? A lot of people tan for spring break, canceled, for weddings, canceled, everything was canceled, and they made us close. There was a federal and state mandate for us to be closed for a period of weeks. Yeah, our revenue was gone. More than 30% decline. So you have to think about it that way. And that 8-week period can be anywhere from March of 2019 through March of 2020. They want you to have this money. Now, a low income community, how do they prove that? Well, there is a website, and that website is called, actually, if you Google low income lookup tool, you'll find it, but it's called geomap.ffiec.gov. It basically, what it does is you type in your businesses, not your home address, your business's address, and it'll show you whether or not your business is in a low income community. And the way you can tell that is if you look at your state's poverty level or average income, if you are 80% below that, then you qualify, then you're there. So for example, if state of Washington, luckily you guys have Boeing, Microsoft, cost, all these good, high income places. So don't think that that a place like Lake Stevens, who has good, rich businesses, or has good business, is going to not qualify for this. Don't count yourself out. It's your business location. So if the state's income, average income is $100,000, and your area, your tract is 80,000, boom, you qualify, and then you go. If you are confused, I say apply, because the only thing they can do is say no. And as you know, if you check the box for an advance, whether or not your loan is considered, you still technically qualify for the advance. That's the way the law is written. If the Small Business Administration decides that they want to interpret things different down the line, they will, and they will announce it, because that's happened before. One thing I want to make sure that I don't forget: the EIDL grant, the advance, if you get it, if you qualify, is tax-free. You're not going to get penalized. That's not income to you. They've written this in the law. Remember the big stack of pages that I read that I didn't enjoy. So if you are a person that drives Uber, if you're 1099, if you're self-employed, you can qualify for this. The way that the law is written now, they have 21 days to decide whether or not you qualify for the EIDL loan. So these things are designed to, one, help the smaller businesses, and to roll out relatively quickly. So that's a big deal. Now, the one thing I want to stress, December 27th is when this law was passed. In the law, it's written, the Small Business Administration had only 15 days to come out with further guidance, right? And they didn't, they missed that deadline. That deadline was actually, I believe it was Monday. They were supposed to have something, or maybe it was Friday, but they were supposed to have something, they didn't come out. So I'm watching that very closely. So when I have more details, I'll put out videos. I'm on YouTube, so I put videos out about this. I will let you know if something changes. But important to note, if you qualify for the EIDL and you have PPP, that's all good. You can have both of them. All right. So I thought that this was extremely important, because everybody needs capital, especially if you have a plan and you don't have the capital to execute that plan. It's a big deal. Let me just make sure I didn't forget anything in my notes. All right. Moving right along, let's talk about grants and documentation. So I have 3 bullets here, and I'll qualify this. So I have been blessed in my career to have both been an internal auditor for an organization, for the Kellogg Foundation, and at the same time, I was also a grantee auditor. So the Kellogg Foundation is a grant giving institution. I would then go out to grantees and I would audit them to our grant agreement, okay? And I was with PricewaterhouseCoopers, I was an auditor, and I've also been an auditor here in the Midwest. So auditing is in my blood, basically. So one of the things I want to do is provide you some insight into how I would look at your organization if I was coming to audit you. Now that's whether or not I'm auditing you for A133 audit or dual audit, where I audit your financial statements and I audit your compliance. An auditor is an auditor is an auditor. So here I have standalone, business purpose, and do not rely on memory. One of the reasons why I'm checking my notes is, pro tip, don't ever rely on your memory. Okay, when you're documenting something, we all are brilliant. We all have those brains that remember everything. I've gone to many an organization where they're like, oh, no, I didn't write that down. I got an email, I got a steel trap memory, and I'm going over here. Your memory changes. Stuff that you remember in your email is completely different when you go back and an auditor's at your desk like, do you have the stuff? Everything goes out the window. So when it comes to documentation for your business or for grants, my quick tips to you are: read the contract. What you think it means may be different from what it means when you actually read the contract. So if somebody gives you a grant to build a park, let's say, and then you say, okay, the spirit of the grant is to build a park so kids can play in the park, it's awesome. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to refurbish these bicycles and give them to the kids because kids like bikes. That's not what the grant says. And you do not want to be in a position where the grantor comes by reviews your documentation and says, I want all my money back. That's not what I'm paying for, right? Or even a client, a customer, a vendor. You think the vendor is going to do X, but you haven't read the agreement, and the vendor has certified in the agreement, I'm going to do Y, and you're going to pay me for X and X. You want to always read that contract for yourself. First quick tip. 2, you have to. Well, I'm going to say it again just because 1 is so important. That grant or that agreement for business, for vendors, for grants, for even you giving it to your clients is crucial. It's the Bible. Okay, it is the word. It's the meeting of the minds that generates your revenue, or it's the meeting of the minds that justifies your expenses. You have to read the agreement. Okay, off the soapbox. 2, you have to have the 5 W's in your documentation of any expense, and you should have it for your revenue too. And when I say 5 W's, I mean who, what, where, when, and why. Who? Who are you with? I went out to a client dinner and I spent $500. Okay. Who are you with? Now, you don't necessarily have to say I was with Peter Gentry from XYZ company, but you should at least say, you know what, meeting with Omnisource, potential client meeting with Omnisource, potential servicing an existing client, that kind of thing. So you need to know who you're with, Omnisource. What did you purchase? If you have a locksmith come by to your business, a lot of times they scribble that doctor's note nonsense that doesn't mean anything. So if you present to me a scribbled paper, if I were auditing you and you present that paper, that doesn't mean anything. Now you have to break pro tip number 1, relying on your memory to figure out why this happened. Even if somebody gives you a receipt, if it's ineligible, that's not great documentation. So you want to work with third-party documents, and you want to have explicitly stated what you purchased. Where did you purchase this thing? Because if I'm auditing you or anyone's auditing you, and you present, hey, a justification for this expense, you are in Washington State. A justification for this expense is this receipt. Where was this purchased? But it was purchased in Sacramento while you're on a family vacation. You've got to kind of explain or connect the dots with your documentation, not with your mouth. That's another thing. You don't want to have to explain. The first bullet on this slide that you can see is stand alone. Your documentation should stand alone. If I come to audit you or somebody comes to audit you, you should be able to shove me in a closet somewhere with your documentation. And then I come out of the dark closet after a while and I say, great, all right, I'm out of it. Right? Because you don't want me in your business. When did you spend? When is important because of generally accepted accounting principles, the matching principle, meaning your expenditures or your expenses should match your revenue for the same period, right? If you go out, if you have to pay salespeople to sell your products or your services, the revenue should match. When the revenue was earned should kind of match that, right? Whenever possible. Sometimes you'll send a salesperson out and you'll get revenue months later, but you need to know when so you can do that matchy exercise. And then finally, why? What was the valid business purpose for this expenditure? For a lot of my present clients and a lot of my auditees, I have a receipt and they'll say for food. Why does food have to do with your business? Did you order food as supplies? Did you take a lunch because you were traveling? Why does this expense relate to your business? If you have that on your receipt, so for example, if I take a client out to dinner, I write, I was with Omnisource, future client meeting, and the receipt has the rest of the stuff. Even if I drink 10 bottles of wine, I have that on there because don't judge me. But it's all on there, right? It's all ready to go. And the auditor doesn't have to ask me anything, they're on to it. Okay. If you make sure everything that your business does has this information, you will be bulletproof, right? You will be good to go. The auditor has nothing else to ask you. Frequently, somebody will say, hey, here's a shoebox full of stuff. I look through it. It's gobbledygook. I don't understand. I have to go back to the person to explain all of that to them. If you've got to explain too much with an auditor, you run the risk, it's not to say that the auditor is going to ding you automatically, but you run the risk of extending the audit. You don't want that. Get them out of there, right? Or having the auditor say, well, this is unacceptable. What do you have? You saying nothing, I don't have anything, potentially running into a scope limitation or a qualified opinion. Or if it's an IRS audit or a grantee audit, having to return the money, having penalties and fines, all of that is no good. You don't want to have to connect the dots to anything because you don't want to rely on your memory and you don't want other people to have to make up a story about what you're doing. Your documents should stand alone. All right, you've made it. We're almost done. The last thing I want to talk about briefly is economic impact payments. Sometimes I cut off my letters. I'm originally from the Bronx. So the stimulus checks, the quick and dirty, the bookends. If you made $75,000 as a single person or 150 as a married couple or less, you get all of it, all $600. I'm sure you'll have dinner. Or if you make $99,000 single or $198,000 married, you don't get any of it. In between, they have a system of figuring out how much you get, but I haven't spent a lot of time on that. You will get some of that $600. Now, we don't know what's going to happen. It is my assumption based on the news, and you probably share it, under our new president and vice president, they're pushing for, in our newly elected 117th Congress, they're pushing for more stimulus checks. But the thing to note about this, don't think about this as economic impact payments. Think about this as, it's called the recovery rebate. So if for whatever reason you didn't file 2018, 2019, or 2020 tax returns, you are still eligible for the recovery rebate. So every American that has a valid Social Security number is eligible for this. So in your 2020 tax return, if you didn't receive this in the mail, you can qualify for this credit, this rebate. It's a refundable credit. So even if you owed money, it'll reduce your tax, or if you don't owe any money, you'll get it on top of your ordinary refund. Some of us, though, got it early via stimulus checks or economic impact payments. So they're the same thing. It's that recovery program. And then finally, I know this, I can't believe it. I feel like I just sat down 2 minutes ago, but it's been a long time. I guess I can yap. If you have further questions, you can reach me through Matt, or you can go to my website, which is cbtlimited.com, or you can email me at cbtlimitedcontact@gmail.com. I am on YouTube, Instagram. I'm even on TikTok for the kids. I'm on LinkedIn. So you can always find Ray Wilburn, CPA MBA. I'm on Twitter. I think on Instagram, I'm Big Ray CPA. I have a bunch of handles. So if you needed to get in contact with me after this, please don't hesitate. And again, thank you guys for having me. It was a fun lunch. 3 o'clock for me, but lunchtime for you. So not bad.
Well, thank you, Ray, for being here. We appreciate it. And that's great information there. A lot of good stuff. Like Ray said, if you need to get in contact with him, take down his information. We did get one quick question real quick, from Monica about the stimulus checks. Do you claim the stimulus check as income, or is that, or is there another way to do that? How is that reconciled, or how is that going to be, or do we know yet?
So from what I understand now, reading that 500 page, so this is not a hamburger. This is the thickness of that act. It's not income. So those stimulus checks do not have to be reconciled back into your income, from what I understand now from that new the Appropriations Act that just came out. I don't know what it was before, but for now, you don't have to reconcile that with the income.
That's nice. Excellent.
It is nice. Because the spirit of the bill was to help. So
right.
It jacks you up if you're giving me income that I didn't anticipate. You're jacking me up now. I don't know how to, So.
Exactly.
Yeah. So very good. Good to know. Thank you, sir.
So I have a really quick question. Hi, I'm Eileen. Sorry, no picture today. But I have been reading about the stimulus coming in a debit card versus a check. Is that legit?
That is legit. So
okay.
They have it does come in a debit card, and kicking themselves. The IRS has had lots of trouble because they send the debit card to you in a plain white envelope so that thieves don't get the debit card. So what ends up happening is you get this mail, you're like, what is this crap? And then you throw it away. And then later you're like, where's my stimulus check? So on the IRS's website, there's a where's my stimulus check link. And what you can do, if you think that you are eligible for a stimulus check and you haven't received it, you can contact the IRS. And what they'll do is they will look and see if your impact check was cashed or your debit card was used. And then if it was, you can file a form that says, no, that wasn't me, I want it. And then they can fix that out, or you can do the recovery credit, or I think it's called the recovery rebate credit on your 2020 tax return.
So I actually got one and I almost cut it up because I thought it was a scam. I was like, you know, the phishing and all that, I'm super hypersensitive to that. And I was like, so then I started doing a little bit of research and I'm like, God, this looks so hinky. So we just tucked it away because
Right.
I wanted to get more verification. So that makes me feel a little bit better.
Now, let me ask you some clarifying questions. It says irs.gov. Was there a letter that came with it? Does it have our President Donald Trump's very pointy signature on it?
I don't remember, but I know that when I looked, I actually have it filed away, but I noticed that when I went on to the IRS site, or not the IRS, but when I put in the name of the card, it looked exactly like the picture on the website. It was a .gov website, and that the issuer of the card was I forget what it is.
That sounds legit to me, because I was just thinking to myself, is it Medtronics, or it's a janky name that you're like, what is this?
Yeah. And then there was a letter, but I wasn't paying attention to the signature because I was just like, I'm just going to tuck that away until I can verify that that's legit. So that makes me feel a little bit better. But I almost cut it up. I was like, I had my scissors and I'm like, well, let me check.
And so no, I'm sorry, man. I just wanted to say quickly, if you cut it up, you can still contact the IRS and say, hey, I didn't cash this, and they can tell.
Oh, good. Okay. But I think people should know that, because I didn't know that. I wasn't actually, I wasn't even really paying attention if and when we were going to get one. And it kind of came and I was like, so yeah, I wish more people would, I wish it was more public knowledge, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
And that's the same thing, Eileen. I got the card as well, and it was like, what the heck? So did all the research on it, and now.
Do you think maybe the chamber could put something on the website?
Information and try to put that up there so people
It's
can
like
see.
an FYI.
Yeah, kind of what the cards look like and the name of the company they're from, stuff like that.
Or a link or something. Yeah, I think it would be helpful.
Good idea. Especially since a lot of them are arriving now and are still yet to arrive. So yeah, it's a good idea. So definitely, for sure. So
yay.
Absolutely. Any other questions for Ray?
Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me. It's pretty awesome. Normally I just talk to myself here in my office, so it's great to talk to actual people.
Connection.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, sir. Appreciate you being here today. And appreciate all you folks for joining us today. If I could get the screen share back for a minute, Ray, I've got a outro that I'll do here real quick, and then we'll do this. So again, thank you all for joining us today. And once again, I'll remind you about our sponsors. You can click the right buttons here. Hold on a second here. I'm sharing the wrong screen. Stop. Try that again. Okay. It's good thing I can edit this out later. It'll be just fine. So once again, thank you all for being here today. And I want to thank again our 2021 gold sponsors, Ace Hardware, as well as Community Transit. Our 2021 silver investors, Waste Management, Heritage Bank, Wells Fargo, and Republic Services. Again, we want to invite you to join us in our networking events over the next couple of weeks, and keep an eye out for I mentioned the video that I'm putting together, the tutorial video for Blitzer for our networking after hours next week. I should have that up probably by the end of the week. Yeah, shooting for the end of the week. We'll put links to it in the newsletter. So keep an eye out for that, and we hope you can join us. So thank you very much. And thanks again, Ray, for being here today and all the great information. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
So thank you, everybody.